Fertility ain't fair.
That's right.
So let's talk about it. Real, raw, unfiltered, with me, your friend, Infertility. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Fertility Ain't Fair. I am your host, Britt, and we have a guest hopping in today. Her name is Regina Townsend, and she is the founder of the Broken Brown Egg. If you have not checked them out on social media or on the web, go ahead and do a quick Google search or a quick IG and Facebook search. She is well-known, well-respected in the infertility, especially for women of color space across many platforms. I'm glad we were able to connect and get her to hop in, tell her story, share about her amazing nonprofit, and just really give us the real. This was a very transparent, honest conversation from the lens of a woman of color dealing with infertility and then being in the space of the transition where she was able to be successful through IVF to have her son. And so, it's February, it's Black History Month, but, that's 365 over here. But I definitely wanted to highlight another amazing woman of color in this space during this month in particular to talk about some things that really need to, let's say, just continually be discussed in Black and Brown communities, infertility being one of them, because it is still so taboo to discuss these certain things amongst each other, amongst family, friends, and in public spaces. And so we are here, as we all know, to normalize those conversations. So in this episode, we talked about infertility while being a Black woman. We talked about antenatal depression. We talked about parenting post-infertility and how that is still its own, separate and unique journey. And how, you don't have to feel guilty about being not okay when you got your baby, right? Because that's what we're all reaching towards on this journey. And so people assume that when you get what you get, you should be happy, right? Maybe not. Maybe there are still lingering feelings in this trauma that is infertility. So look, it's time to get your water, get your coffee, get whatever you need, get your pen and get your notebook. I hope it's the Fertility Ain't Fair journal that is available, shameless plug, on Amazon right now. And if not, make sure you go and get yourself one, order your My Fertility Ain't Fair journal, but grab your notes and let's hop in. All right, we have a very special guest hopping into Fertility Ain't Fair on this episode, Miss Regina Townsend, founder of the Broken Brown Egg. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. First of all, I really love the name of the show.
Oh, thank you.
Because it's really not. It's really kind of a jerk.
No, for real. And that's how I felt. And I was like, there was no other words I could use besides ain't, because it was just, it ain't.
Yeah, no, it just ain't. It just ain't. And it don't care.
It doesn't. It don't care. It don't discriminate. And yeah, it ain't fair. So I appreciate that. So we're going to get into a couple of different things on this episode. But before we do any of that, first, just want to thank you on the show for once again being an advocate in this space for women of color in particular. Talking about infertility and IVF and all of the things that went into your personal journey to motherhood, and just for still being a part of the community, even though you have transitioned over. We were able to have an amazing 5-year-old who might be in the background, and that's okay.
Yes, chilling.
Listen, and that's okay. But thank you for being a part of the community and for now being a friend of Fertility Ain't Fair.
Thank you. I really, one of the things that was frustrating to me when I first started the Broken Brown Egg, when I was looking for people, was that some of the sites that I did find, because it wasn't that it was zero, it was still very few, it was less than a handful, but the ones that I did find, once they, resolved their infertility, either by deciding to remain childless or that they had gone on to have children, they stopped updating the site. They were gone. And it was like, but I needed your voice. Where did you go?
Right. And there's always someone else coming up behind us,
Yes,
unfortunately.
yes.
So it's like, stay out there for the ones who are just starting or on a different, part of their journey because we still need you.
Yeah, I was like, I still need to know that I'm not crazy. I still need to know what happens next. I still need you. So that was one of the things that was really important to me was how do I stay present? Because it doesn't really go away. So how do I stay present even in this new phase?
Yeah. And I want to go, I'm going to make a note to go back to that it doesn't go away because I've heard that now several times from women who have, as I mentioned, transitioned from, being in an infertile space into being able to have a child. And for a couple women, they told me it's a scar almost. It's like a wound, right? That just kind of never goes away. And even though you have gone on to what we all are trying to get to, it still is forever present. So I'm going to go back to that. But first, how do you define yourself? What are those words or phrases that describe Regina?
Oh, that's a heck of a question. Just keep it simple, Brittany. Good grief. I think Regina is a she is a very brave person who's terrified the whole time. And always wants to help other people get through the things that are terrifying. um, I have always had a heart for service. My grandmother was very big on service, and so that was just kind of instilled in me, service and education, and that's kind of shaped my life. Professionally, I'm a librarian, so that's education and information, but then also I'm a teen librarian, so I'm the advocate for young people who come in the space making a lot of noise, driving everybody crazy. I'm the one going, well, they're making noise because da da da. So I'm always thinking of how to educate and how to serve and how to advocate for people, even while I'm terrified the whole time myself. And that has translated seamlessly into what I do in the fertility space and really every space that I'm in. I'm always the one that's going, do we have do we have to do it like that? Because actually,
I love
always from
that.
elementary school to now, I was local school council and student council, and the main one that would go to the teachers and be like, actually, if you look here on this disciplinary code, you do have to let me go to the bathroom. I know you were in the middle of your lesson, but according to your contract that you
You were
wrote,
that kid, right?
I
You were
get to
that
go.
kid.
Yeah, I was that kid that just, which I guess is why I relate so well to teenagers now because, they think they've got it figured out. And I really thought that I did as well. And it helps me to understand and relate to them. Like, I know you think, but this ain't going to go down how you think it's going to go down. But I appreciate your fervor, but you're going to have to rein it in.
Right. No,
And that's how
that's
I am in this
important.
space too, where I'm like,
Yeah.
so you telling me I got to do all of this before you do that test? Well, that's stupid. Let's talk about why that is.
That don't make no sense.
Yeah, that don't math.
It's the math ain't mathing.
Yeah, at
Look,
all.
but that's a good point because, like you said, going through it, but you're still able to advocate. You're still able to help someone else out, but being terrified the entire time, and that's real. I mean, there's no, as we keep hearing and keep saying, there's no, handbook per se on how to deal with all of this, and then to add cultural elements into it. There's just no matter who you talk to, there is still no how-to booklet on how to do this. Any part of it, from start to middle to end, wherever your end may be, it's just we're trying to grab information as we go because it hits you quick usually. Like most people don't plan for this,
No.
right? It's not something that you plan for. And so I'm going to get into that. But first, on a broader topic, um, why do you think, and I want to start here because looking at this conversation, I think it's important from a Black women's lens with infertility because it is different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why do you think infertility is still such a taboo topic in Black communities, still here in 2022?
Girl, I think it it's so many layers that you can get lost in them. And I think it's the same with why mental health is such a stigma. It's the same with why we don't go to the doctor in general. It's the same with how we feel about the church. There's so much weight on being a Black person. Um, and I think when we say this around amongst other races and other groups, they're like, they look at the violence part and they can kind of relate if they got some sense. But the other parts, the subversive parts, the insidious parts that you can't see, that weight is added to everything. So if I can't get pregnant, if I can't get the job, if I can't get the spouse, if I'm sad, if I have any kind of mental health um, inefficiency that someone deems an inefficiency, I'm weaker. And when I'm weaker, I'm more vulnerable. And when I'm more vulnerable, I'm not safe. And I think that's been a big thing with Black people in this country from the minute we got here and before, is that the minute that our guard is down, we are not safe. And so that feeling of I need to be hyper vigilant all the time about everything permeates through every other area of our lives. It's why we got to be the good one at work. We can't, say what we want to say. We can't act up, keep your inside business inside. We don't we don't tell everybody what's going on with us because it's unsafe for us to do so. And I want more than what my stereotype has said turns into a prison at a certain point. Because especially when it comes to Black women, I'm not going to be the teenage mom that society told me that all Black girls are. And I'm going to get the degree because society has told me that Black women, that we don't. And I'm going to do these things the quote unquote right way so that I can get to the other side that they're saying is not attainable for my people. And so you do all that. And then you look up and this is going on and you like, okay, now look, somebody done lied.
Somebody lied to me. My whole body's a lie.
Somebody done lied. The veil is lifted and I can't unsee it now. And I don't know what to do with that. And so we just kind of, let me be quiet and I'll figure it out. That's one side of it. Let me be quiet and just put my head down and figure this thing out because that's what we do. We figure it out. And then the other side of it is when you start looking at all those stereotypes and you've internalized them, you start going, well, if all Black women are hyper fertile, what's wrong with me? If all of us have this many kids, what's wrong with me? And am I broken? And do I belong? And who do I ask? Because if I tell somebody, then they're going to know. If I ask somebody, then they're going to know. And so I need to just figure this out and let me just, deflect and be the cool auntie and I'll buy all the great gifts and I'll take all the kids on the trips and I'll do all of this and all of that. And when they ask me questions, I'll deflect and say, well, I'm busy, I'm working on my career, I haven't found the right partner. We're enjoying being married. We work on all of that because there's that shame of I'm different and that's a problem. And I'm not strong enough, and that's a problem. And I'm broken, and that's a problem. And so we just kind of pile it on, and cover it up, and we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Like I told people, sometimes I'll figure it out as my trauma response. When I'm just overwhelmed and I really don't know what to do, but I can't let on that I don't know what to do. That would be catastrophic. So instead I say, you know what, I'll figure it out. No, don't worry about it. I got it. I figured out. And it's the same strong Black woman thing that we've got in every other area.
Mm-hmm. No, you made so many good points, and it resonates a lot with how I feel and how I know other women, especially of color, have felt, and especially when it comes to this, because as you mentioned, it all seems like, and I wrote it before, I did the right things. As you mentioned, you avoid, babies too early, you go to college, you get a good job, you make your, people proud, you do all of these things. And then, you find your partner, hopefully, whoever that is, and y'all commit and whatever. And then here we are, and we are then hit with something else that we've never been talked to about.
Yep.
Mostly our whole lives. I
And
have
didn't know was
yet
a
to
thing. Didn't even
didn't
know
know
it was
was
a
a
thing.
thing. And as you mentioned, didn't even know where to start. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of our biggest things in a lot of areas of our lives as Black people, is we don't know where to start something because it was never part of our conversations at any point as we were growing up, wherever that was. And
Yeah.
so this is no different.
Yeah. Who do I talk to?
Infertility.
Where do
Who
I
do you
go for
talk
this?
to?
They don't
Right,
have this in my,
right.
I mean, even to the point where, I'm on the south side of Chicago. There are no fertility centers on the south side of Chicago. They don't exist here. But I'll drive past 50 kidney dialysis and 25 Planned Parenthoods, and I'll drive past what society says I need, not what I actually need. And so when I do need something different, I'm like, well, where do I even go for that? And do I want to go to that side of town where don't nobody look like me? And am I safe there? And am I welcome there? Can I afford to be there? All those feelings come up without anybody ever actually saying anything.
Yep, yep. So you all took, I think it was almost a decade
Mm-hmm.
to get to the point where you all were able to conceive, or was that to actually have your son or start IVF? What was your time span like to get to motherhood?
Yeah, it was about a decade to even get to IVF. We got married in 2005, and we did IVF in 2015. Yeah. And in the middle of all of that, because there's this long, there's the long timeline when someone looks at it, but there's so much that's happening in the middle of that. When we first got married, we were only 23. So in our minds, we had time. And then it was, let me finish. Well, I was done, but my husband wasn't done with his degree, and we were trying to make sure that was okay. And then in the middle of that, my 15-year-old sister got pregnant, and we were helping, my mom navigate that and helping my sister navigate that. And so many people around us had so much going on. But in the middle of that, I was also dealing with periods that would last months at a time. So we were trying to figure out, well, what the heck is that about? And then my husband got diagnosed with diabetes, and we were trying to figure out what the heck was that. And then it was, sometimes we had insurance depending on our jobs. Sometimes we didn't have insurance. And it was just this stop, go, stop, go. And I couldn't get a really good understanding of what the reason my periods were so long, because when you're going to the clinics and not your own, gynecologist, not that for some people that's no different,
Right,
but
right.
it was like, it's a different doctor every time. They're not really telling me anything. And their only answer is, well, here's birth control pills. And that's not really
Right.
getting to the root of anything. Nobody's doing any testing or investigating. It's just, let's stop the problem, and then we'll clear out this list of people who are here. And it wasn't just me. There were friends of mine who were in the same situation, who were trying to do things the right way, or trying to do what they felt was the correct quote unquote order, and hitting these roadblocks of health issues that nobody had explained to us. Nobody had really talked through reproductive health. They'd only talked
Right.
about sexual health. And so
Yep.
when you're dealing with periods that are strange, or hormonal changes that are affecting not just your period, but also your skin, your hair, your nails, all this other stuff, and you have no understanding of it, or if you've had really painful periods, but you've always been taught that's normal, and you don't know you have endometriosis, you don't know you have fibroids, you just thought maybe something else was going on, or you were overweight or whatever. Now that you don't know that you're dealing with it until you know that you're dealing with it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Oh yeah,
And
that's my life as well.
yeah, and then you're like, okay, well, now what? And so we were
Yeah.
going back and forth to doctors trying to figure that out. And then it would be, I have a great job with insurance, let me find a doctor. And then it would be, I don't have that job with insurance, what do we do now? And it was off and on and off and on. And in the meantime, I started the blog because I really just needed to get my thoughts out because I was so frustrated and I felt like I wasn't seeing Black people talk about this. I was only seeing white blogs. And while they were helpful in the sense of basic information, I needed to know I wasn't alone. I needed to know I wasn't crazy and that I wasn't broken
Right.
irreparably.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and so I started the blog to just kind of say exactly what I was thinking when I was thinking it. And that helped me to navigate my feelings. And then we wanted to give back. And so we decided to make it a nonprofit and try to support others in the midst of it. And the years just kept going. And then we finally discovered that I had PCOS. And first time I went to the doctor and told her that, she was like, it's not PCOS, girl. Everybody thinks because
Wow.
they have, yeah, because it was a doctor who was following my site who sent me a message because he was going to be in Chicago with his wife and asked if I would have lunch with them. And I was like, sure. And we went to lunch and he said, I've been reading your blog and I'm looking at your skin and I just want to know if you've ever talked to your doctor about PCOS because a lot of indicators I'm seeing, and I think maybe it could be PCOS. And then, if it's PCOS, there are things that you can do, barring any other issues that can help with ovulation and you can move forward. And I was like, oh, I actually have a doctor's appointment coming up. I'm going to run that by her. Brand new doctor. I think it's going to be great. I was so excited because I was like, maybe we got an answer. And when I told her, she was like, it is not that. You don't have any cysts. And, everybody's got Google and they read and they think that they know everything, but it's really not that. I think if you just work on your weight, we can get this going. And she was really sweet with it. And I don't think she realized she was being as dismissive as she was. But
Right.
I was so angry and hurt because I thought I had an answer. And you just told me I don't know nothing.
Nothing. You Googled, you were wrong.
Yeah, you Googled and you don't know what you're talking about, librarian who does research for a living. So get out.
Right.
And so I left, and then that's where the strength of the Broken Brown Egg really started to work for me because I used that site to help me stay accountable. And it really did in that moment make me say, well, what would I tell somebody else? I would tell somebody else, don't go by what the one doctor said. So when I called back, she wasn't available. And I said, well, can I see someone else? And it was like the lights turned on, like, oh, that's right. I don't have to see her. I don't have to go back to the same person. I can keep moving until I find somebody who makes me feel like I've been seen and heard and understood. And that's when I found a doctor who actually said, yeah, I think it is. If you think it is, let's look into it. And she's who found out that not only did I have PCOS, but my tubes were blocked. And so that's how we ended up moving forward towards IVF. And even then, there was another few years between that and getting pregnant because we had decided to pursue adoption because we had a relative who was pregnant and didn't think that they'd be able to parent. And then they changed their mind the day we went to pick the baby up. And so we struggled with that. But then also because they still didn't have the ideal situation, we ended up as foster parents for 6 to 7 months. And so that was an emotional drain and a lot of like soul searching about, well, what are we supposed to do now, Lord? Because I thought maybe all of this had been happening because you wanted us to be here for this baby. And so if we're not supposed to be here for this baby, then what was all of that for? And you try to do God's math and figure it all out for yourself. And
Yep, you should.
yeah. And so we struggled with that. And there's a whole slew of feelings that come with that journey. And then after that, it was kind of like, you know what, look, I'm not going to keep on with this. I can feel myself getting exhausted and something has to give. And that's when I actually had a program at the library where I work to talk with other people who were experiencing just family building issues in general and wanted to know where to start. And so I brought in Reverend Stacy Edwards Dunn from Fertility for Colored Girls. I brought in an adoption attorney, someone from DCFS, and a reproductive endocrinologist to talk about the medical side. And the doctor who came in, she was like, "Oh, Regina, I remember we did this last year. You were pursuing IVF. What happened?" And I told her about the whole thing, the foster care and the adoption, and how we'd kind of been on pause, and how actually quite recently my doctor wasn't covered under insurance anymore because my job, the whole village changed insurance carriers. And she was like, "Just come see me because this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
Okay.
Just come see me and I'll take your insurance. We'll figure something out. But this has been too long of just the stop and go." And she's like, "You were almost there. And I just hate to hear you, sound so defeated." Because I really was at that point. I was like, I did everything. Once again, I went to the clinic that I finally got a referral to and fought my way into, and finally was about to get to go time. And then got that lovely email that the rest of the employees got that was like, "Oh, we're changing from Blue Cross to," it's like, wow. You guys don't know what you're doing to somebody who's in the middle of this. Yeah.
So did you, at that first time, did you ever even get to your egg retrieval or no?
Didn't get to anything other than the first 2 or 3. We did all of our baseline testing and all of our preliminary conversations with the doctor. And then we had just gotten to, here's how much this is all going to cost, which was a scary meeting. Here's how much this is all going to cost. Here's everything that's wrong with you. And here's everything that's wrong with you. Because up until that point, all I knew was my tubes are blocked and I'm not ovulating, or whatever they felt, was happening with ovulation due to my PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, for anybody who doesn't know. And in most cases, they don't really check your partner at first. They check the woman first.
Right.
And so this was the first time we had actually gotten to full scale testing. And so then we found out that we had male factor issues, and we were also dealing with my AMH, which was not a bad number. It was just extremely high. And so her fear was, we can do IVF, but you might hyperstimulate because your hormones may react insanely to that medication. And so we'll monitor you, but I want you to be aware that if it does get to that point, we'd have to cancel the cycle. And, you don't hear the part of, we'll monitor you and it should be okay. You don't hear that. You hear the, if it doesn't work.
I'm back to square one.
I'm back to square one and out whatever money I've already spent. Because at this point, you're so used to the other shoe drops every time. So if you're telling me there's a chance that the other shoe is going to drop, I'm looking at the other shoe already. Already. So I didn't even hear you say, "Oh, we'll monitor you." And so we had just gotten through that, and we're about to get, our next set of instructions after paying our deposits and paying for the medications. And then my village was like, "Actually, we found this other," and they didn't think about, they don't. Who is thinking about that? No. So I was just so frustrated. It wasn't that I couldn't find another clinic. It was, I didn't know, I was back to, I don't know where to start. I went to where I was referred to, which was the largest, fertility center here. And I thought, I did my due diligence. They had come to the Broken Brown Egg, had a gala, and we had done so much outreach, and they were such great people. And I was really looking forward to working with them. And then it was just like, now what do I do? So her throwing out that lifeline and saying, "Well, come see me, girl. Let's just, because this is stupid."
That was a blessing.
Yeah, it was such a blessing. Yeah, I was just like, this. She was like, "This is stupid, and I can help. Just this. I don't want to see you have to do this all over again. Just come see me." And she was so positive and I needed that after so many years of stop and go and yes and no and up and down. She was so like, "Oh, we can get around this. Oh, the AMH, yeah, that's no problem. The sperm issues, no issue. We got that. Come see me. You know what? While you're here, let's do your baseline testing. Let's go across the hall and do It was boom, 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 boom,
Oh,
boom.
wow.
After so many
Wow.
years of waiting, and it was almost scary how fast things moved after that, which, in my mom's opinion, indicates that things were timed the way God wanted them timed.
As always.
Yeah, which
Yep.
is very hard
Yep.
to,
It's
accept
hard.
when you're in it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I know you also, on your bio, had mentioned hypothyroidism.
Yes,
Now, was that for you or hubby?
that was me. That was
Okay, so
me.
how did I've heard that once before with someone who had trouble as well to conceive, but eventually ended up being able to. But she also was diagnosed with that. So tell us a little bit about what that is and how it can affect possibly fertility as well.
Yeah, so hypothyroid is an underactive thyroid condition. And I've had it really since I was about 16 or 17. And it affects my metabolism, it affects my skin, my hair. It actually mirrors a lot of the same symptoms as PCOS. And because of what it does metabolically, it kind of very similar to PCOS. They kind of crazy when I think about it. It would affect things like my ability to ovulate. It would affect things like I would go to the doctor and they'd be like, well, you need to just lose weight. When hypothyroid, that underactive thyroid gland, it doesn't get your metabolism going the way that it normally would. So losing weight is not just a simple thing for me. And so a lot of the time when I was first going to my regular, not even my OBGYN, when I was first going to just my general doctor and asking her just basic questions about fertility or anything with my period, that was the main thing she kept going back to was, well, it's probably your thyroid. And if you take your thyroid medication right, everything should just kind of clear up. It wasn't until I learned more about what really is entailed in terms of fertility that I realized that your doctor, who's your general doctor or your primary care physician, they are not looking at it the same way that your gynecologist is, and your
Right.
gynecologist is not looking at you the same way that a reproductive endocrinologist is looking. And I think that that was a big missing piece for me, because I would have just kept going thinking, well, let me just take my thyroid pill right and try to do this diet for the 35th time. And it'll be fine, when really there were more things that I needed to do in terms of PCOS. And then from the reproductive endocrinology side, there was yet another thing. So I was cold all the time. My mom had hyperthyroid when she was about 37. She lost a ton of weight. She had what they call a goiter, which is an enlarged thyroid gland. And her eyes would bulge out, and she was shaky all the time. And she was so nervous about hyperthyroid and passing it down that we didn't even talk about hypo. We didn't even know that that was a thing. And
Right.
so when I was struggling with weight in high school, struggling with weight and thin, brittle hair and all these other things in early college, we didn't even know, until I had a doctor tell me when I was like 17 or 18, that was what it was. And I wish that I had known how it affects, your body's systems, so that I could have put more. I don't know. I don't think I took it as seriously. Same with PCOS.
Yeah.
The, those symptoms, they were a means to an end in terms of, I really want my period to not be here longer
Right.
than, some animals gestate. I really would like to live my life and move easily through
Right.
these streets. But it also affects, it can lead to heart disease. It can lead to so many other things. But in my mind, I was just like, I'm really just trying to get this period to go away and have a baby. I'm not even thinking about
That's
all of that.
it.
And it
Right.
really took time for me to realize that we need to do more of understanding how our bodies work.
Yeah.
And I think, soapbox moment, I really feel when it comes to Black women and their bodies, our bodies have been so policed. and dictated that we don't have any clear instructions on them ourselves. We don't even get a chance to get to know them ourselves before we're told, sit like a lady, she's so fast, don't get pregnant. There's
Right.
so much weight of policing on us that we're never given the opportunity to just get to know, this is how your body works. This is a beautiful thing about you. This is something that's different about you. You don't get to do any of that. It's, let me
No,
just,
it's don't do this, don't do
don't,
that,
don't, don't, don't,
don't.
don't.
And then
Yep.
what about what you should do, right?
Yeah.
What are the health, the good things that your body brings to the table, and what you can do forward, and how you can prepare your body for different things. And as you mentioned earlier, it's so much around sexual health
Mm-hmm.
versus reproductive health. That's two different things.
Yep.
I mean, it relates, but it's education wise, it can be two different, kind of sides of the coin. And so, as you mentioned, policing and don't do this and don't get pregnant and take birth control, that's one side of the coin. But we have this whole other side that we need to understand, as you mentioned, what symptoms may look like. And if we're noticing, period up and downs, or as you mentioned, very painful periods, or acne, or brittle hair and nails, that all can still go back to your reproductive and your female health. And that is so much bigger than just having a baby.
Yep.
I shouldn't be slapped on the hand or yelled at for asking about the parts that are inside my female body. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So it's a lot. It's heavy. It's a lot. But I hope as we continue to have more of these conversations on large and small scales, that we're just able to continue to reach more and more younger women at a point before a lot of us had to deal with it. I mean, so you all went through a 10 years hypothyroidism, PCOS, blocked fallopian tubes, type 2 diabetes, male factor issues, but God, and your son was born in 2016. So I know that was probably a lot, but if you could summarize it for us, what was the feeling, I guess, during your pregnancy?
Honestly, I struggled really badly with what's called antenatal depression. And I had never heard of that either. I didn't know that was a thing.
Give me that one more time. What is it?
It's called antenatal depression, and that's depression while pregnant.
Okay.
And those who experience antenatal depression can then be at higher risk for postpartum depression. And then on top of that, those who've experienced fertility treatments or infertility have higher risks of both. And I did not know any of that.
I've never heard of that.
Didn't know any of it. Okay. And it's primarily because you've had so much hormonal things going on in general. And so from the medical side, there's that. But then on the emotional side, for many of us, when we deal with infertility and we can't really create a community in our own family, we will create community, not like have babies. I mean, create community of support in our own families. We'll then create that community of support via the internet, blogs, social media, that kind of thing. Well, if you're in a group and everybody's trying to get pregnant and then you're the one that does, you're not in the group.
Out the group now.
You out the group. Yeah. You out the band. And so even if nobody says that, you'll exclude yourself because I don't want to trigger anybody. I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. I don't want to be happy while my sisters are sad. Let me remove myself from the table and not overstep. But what that does is you lose your community. And now you're back at square one. And you don't feel like the quote unquote normal pregnant people who didn't go through, everything that you went through. So you don't really want to necessarily hop in with them, and you can't go back to your old. So you're kind of just out there all of a sudden. And that is a shock to the system. Like, what do I do? Who do I talk to? You're back in that feeling of where do I begin? Then there's also the fear. we didn't experience physical loss, but that adoption disruption was very traumatic for us. And it's a loss. And, you know, we really struggled with getting our feelings together after that situation. And so you're anxious that something's going to go wrong. Yes, I'm pregnant today, but what's going to happen tomorrow? And I can't get comfortable until I see a heartbeat. And then I can't get comfortable until I see an ultrasound. And then I can't get comfortable until I see, and it just goes on and on and on. And it can be very overwhelming. And most people don't talk about that part. They look at it as, well, once you get pregnant, ain't you happy now? You did what you said you want to do. You got the baby. And it's like, yeah, but this is bigger than babies. This has affected everything I think. So if I was a really big, hopeful person and then infertility came, I struggle with hope now. If I was a really, you know, positive, optimistic, let's move forward, we can conquer anything person. And then I've dealt with this for 10 years of my body not doing what it's supposed to do. The closest relationship I have, literally, my own body. I'm supposed to just be cool and believe you when you say there's a baby in there. Let me show me. Where is it? Let me hear it.
Show me. Yes.
And also when you've dealt with fertility treatments, when you're under the monitoring of your fertility center, you're getting pretty much consistent scans because they're trying to make sure that everything is working properly. And so you're learning what's going on with that fetus consistently. And then you graduate from there to back to your regular gynecologist and obstetrician, and you might not get ultrasound for like 3 months, 4 months. And so
that's scary. It's scary.
It's scary. You're like,
what's happening in there?
Yeah. And you in your head, you're going, I'm going to go in here. And they're going to be like, we're so sorry. Because you see it so much in this community. And you feel like I'm no better than any of these other people who have had to experience such loss. How dare I get comfortable? How dare I talk about how, you know, sick I am? How dare I talk about how uncomfortable my body is right now? How dare I say that I'm not feeling great today, or that I don't look great today, or how dare I say anything? And so you're just stuffing all those feelings in and combining them with this fear that something's going to go wrong. And so that depression was so heavy of just like, I don't know how to handle this feeling of fear that I'm in now. I don't know what to do. And there were so many I did get extra scans. And I remember one of them, they would list it as we're doing these additional scans because this was an IVF pregnancy. And I remember feeling like, damn, I still don't get to be just a pregnant. Okay, cool. All right, never mind.
My little extra tag.
Yeah, it was just like, dang, okay, cool. So at what point do I just get to be a woman?
And when
am I going to get to chill? When do I get to just have the no strings attached part of this? And do I get that? And it was just hard. It was just hard. The pregnancy itself was easy breezy lemon squeezy. Judah was no problem physically. I think I only got sick one time, but emotionally, it was very heavy. And also when you're in a relationship that has been in such trauma for so long, there's tension in your own marriage, you know, like people don't talk about that, but it is hard for a couple to remain what they started out as while going through fertility treatments. And it's not that they're intending to not be on the same page, but you start to get so tired. And especially when it comes to men, they don't really get a voice in the fertility community. And so they're pretty much putting a lot of their interest on how do I make sure she's okay? How do I make sure she feels heard? How do I make sure she? And so that tension is building up also. And so now you finally get to what is supposed to be the finish line, but you're so kind of tired. And that's not the case for everybody, but I do think it's important for more people to be honest about the fact that that is often that is the case. It's very hard to keep being the great loving relationship that you were while also trying to navigate your own levels of grief and your own levels of pain. And now you're going to be parents. Let's do that. Let's do that this week. Let's be happy and figure that out next and do all the fun stuff. Let's do all the fun stuff and everything. And now you're just supposed to be normal pregnant person. And it's not like that. It's really not. And I help lead a support group for those who are pregnant and parenting after infertility, for Fertility Rally. And it's one of the most common things when we get new members in my group is that they're not quite sure why they don't feel happy and why they don't feel excited yet, or that they have people around them that are like, why don't you want to, why can't you just, and they're like, I feel so terrible and ungrateful. And it's the most common thing that comes up in that group. And we have to remind each other, you're not normal pregnant person. This didn't happen that way for you. And so you're coming out of a trauma. Yeah. And I don't think people think of infertility as trauma.
And I just actually wrote that down because that's a word that I didn't even recognize to put it with my journey until probably about a year ago. And maybe not even that long, but during last year, I think I saw it somewhere else and I was like, you know what? You damn right. It is absolutely a trauma. It's a life-changing event. It is, I said earlier, a scar. It is just something that, and my scar is still wide open because, I have not yet conceived. And so, we're looking to start IVF. I'm waiting on insurance authorization as we speak. But, right. But it is a trauma. And as I mentioned in the beginning, talking to women like yourself who have gone through it and have come out on the other side of at least, being able to have one child. So far, people don't recognize it, as you mentioned, after it happened. It's like, okay, well, you're good now. No, I'm not. You're fine. And I'm glad that you were able to put that into words because you have gone through it and you're still in it. And so, as you mentioned, it's having that space to parent post infertility. That was big for me because, I pray to be in that space, that I can join that kind of community at some point in time in my life. But that's really serious because it's just not recognized, I don't think, because people think that, okay, once you cross over, then you're good, you're fine. Yeah, it was awful. It was sad. It was up and down, but you got what you wanted. And so now you should be just okay. And there's no way to be okay. There's no way to just be okay after, as we mentioned, a life trauma that spanned however many years it took you. Because I don't think for anybody, it's a quick process. I mean, if you're truly diagnosed with infertility, there's no quick way around this. Unless, a drop down miracle happens for you very quickly. But on the treatment side and everything else, I haven't heard too many, quick fix stories. So it's just, thank you for sharing that. And for that just kind of brought light bulbs to me in terms of, things that I need to just be aware of, prayerfully when we get to that space, to know that it's okay to feel guilty and feel still sad. And I'm glad you brought up what was it called again? Antenatal depression.
Yeah, antenatal
depression, because that's big. That's big.
Yeah. And it's when you add the guilt of feeling like I'm supposed to be happy, aren't I? I should be. And it wasn't until I looked it up that I was like, oh, this is a thing? Why y'all didn't tell me this was a thing?
Why did y'all tell me? I said, damn it. Why you tell me?
There's so many parts of this journey where I was just like, why y'all ain't say nothing?
No, every day I feel like I see or I hear something or I go through, I'm like, Y'all could have said
Y'all
something
really could have
about
put this in the
this.
brochure. I really don't know why y'all didn't put this in the brochure. I would have
Maybe it's the old
appreciated.
version. I need the new
Yeah,
version. I
like
need the updated
somebody
version.
update this because this was not on the About Us page and I'm
It
upset.
wasn't.
This was
It
not
wasn't.
there.
I didn't sign this contract. This contract
Yeah,
was different.
it's so
Mm-mm.
many moments. All of it.
Oh my goodness.
All of it.
Period. Period. But let's talk about your book real quick. Make sense. Where did that come from? And
Yes.
what? Yeah, tell us about it.
I think for me, when I was first looking for books in this space, because like I said, I'm a librarian, and so I'm big on books, obviously. When I was first navigating my infertility, and I couldn't find the blogs that I felt represented me, the next step for me was books. And while they existed, there wasn't anybody that was just talking from a practical sense. There was a lot of clinical expertise, and then, or it was the complete other side of the spectrum where it was like, just think positive and everything will be cool. Just relax. And I was like, that don't help me. I need to, I need to know what to say to Auntie so and so when she come at me the next time. I need to
Because
know.
it's gonna be a problem.
Yes, I
help.
need to know what do I ask at this doctor's appointment instead of just flipping a desk if they don't answer. Like, what do I actually do? And why does this feel so bad? And where did this come from? As a Black person, why didn't I know this? And so when I started, I actually was just going to start making a guided journal and help people kind of navigate on their own. But the more that I started working on the journal, I was going to do these little intros to each section that were just little snippets of my story that I thought could help. And the more that I started doing those, I was like, oh, well, why don't you just write that, girl? What did you do? So that's what I started to do, was just writing out how my story came together, but also explaining in the meantime, here's where those feelings came from. And here's what I said in this situation. And here's prompts for what you could say. And here's a space for you to write down what you might be thinking. And so it's a mixture of a journal, a mixture of a memoir, and then also it's got actual information about, like, what are some of these conditions? What do these definitions mean? What are all of these dang on acronyms that everybody is using?
Yes.
It's got coloring sheets in the back. It's got things for you to do at the doctor's office. Even I've got a Sudoku puzzle in there. I've even got a people watching sheet so that when you're in the clinic, you can kind of say, okay, now why she wear that? You know, whatever helps you get through it. With a feeling of yourself at the end of it, because there's so many parts that you lose if you don't have an anchor. And so my hope with the book is that it helps people to have that anchor of place to write your own thoughts, place to get some perspective and insight. And also there's a lot of information that I put in there because my primary goal with the Broken Brown Egg was more than just me. It was, let's understand why Black women and Black men and Black people are struggling with this at a higher rate and also not getting the treatment. And so there's also a portion of the book that looks at the historical context of how Black Americans feel about the medical industry and where that came from and where the stereotype came from that said we were hyperfertile in the first place and why we don't go to the doctor in the first place. Because I felt like that was important and not enough people are aware of it. You know, when I get in different spaces, when I first started the Broken Brown Egg, people would say things like, well, why does it have to be about Black women? Infertility is tough on all of us. And it was like, that's real cute. No, it is different because our experience is different. And you may go into the doctor's office having never had to put on, you know, this persona when you go places, because you can walk through life freely and say what you want and speak and feel heard. Whereas we tend to not have that opportunity. So when you're saying, well, why didn't you just ask the doctor? Because I don't know how to do that. I don't never had the opportunity to speak.
I also don't know what to ask.
Yeah, what I'm supposed to ask. Genius, you know, since you know everything. But that's the goal of the book, is to give some context and also some humor to help you to kind of make this thing make sense for you, because infertility don't make no sense. She don't make sense. She just come in running her mouth, going to your refrigerator, acting a fool. And it's like, you really need to understand, like, who is she? What is she talking about?
And why is she coming for me so hard?
And why is she upset with me? Like, what did I do? Did I steal her man? What are we upset about? And I really, really love helping people understand this, because I want you to feel like you're still you. Because if you get to the whatever the other side is, be it that you get pregnant and have kids, that you adopt, that you choose to resolve your infertility and be child free, I want you to walk away feeling like you're yourself still. You might be a changed version of yourself, but you're yourself. You know you. Because this thing will make you doubt yourself and not trust yourself and think, I don't even know who I am anymore. And so my hope is that the book helps people to walk away going, no, I know who I am. I know who this heifer infertility is too.
Exactly. And I got something for her.
And I got something for her.
Now I'm ready.
Yeah, I got something for her and that nosy heifer at church that keeps saying stuff. Yeah.
Hilarious. I love you. You sold me. I love it. I feel like you have given a lot of advice that I have appreciated throughout this conversation, but what is your lasting piece of advice for women of color, specifically going through infertility?
Oh, my sisters, I feel like the biggest thing for us specifically, I usually say that infertility is bigger than babies, and I say that to everybody. It is absolutely bigger than babies, and you cannot navigate this thing only thinking about that, because you will lose yourself. Or if you're the person that's in the support position, you will lose the person you're trying to support, because there's so much more going on with them. So that's my general everybody. When it comes to Black women, I think the biggest thing is understanding that you have absolutely got the right to want this for yourself. You have the right to build your family however you choose, with whomever you choose, whenever you choose. And that right is something that no one should be taking away from you. Infertility is a reproductive health issue, and it's a reproductive justice issue. And I feel like we don't often think about that. And so wanting Black women to recognize that they have the right to pursue this with everything they've got is highly important to me.
That's the word. I mean, that's it. That's the post. I mean, look, I'm gonna leave it there because I needed to hear that, and I know someone else did as well. So, how can people reach you? Please, web, social, give out all that good info, because I know you will connect more women who need this space and who need to feel heard and seen. So, how they find you?
Yeah, so you can visit thebrokenbrownegg.org. We also have a thriving community called Shell Shock. That is our online support group. We have programming that we do within that group, and also it's a place for you to interact that's not a part of social media. We were on Facebook for years, and now we have our own support community that you can join for free, or you can choose to subscribe, and that helps us pay the bills on it. You can find me on Instagram at Broken Brown Egg, and on Facebook at The Broken Brown Egg.
Thank you, Regina. Listen. I really do. I truly feel energized after this conversation. I feel just a little bit more hopeful in our journey. So I just thank you so much for offering your story and your perspective and your expertise in this space. And thank you for allowing us just to be able to connect.
Oh, I'm so grateful, and I'm so glad to hear that you feel hopeful, because it is something that you can hope for. It's just not easy, but you can hope for it. And I think that that's so important. If you have hope, you have half the battle.
So I loved this conversation. Once again, a thank you to Regina, the Broken Brown Egg, for being a part of Fertility Ain't Fair and hopping in and just giving us, as I mentioned at the top, the real behind being a Black woman and dealing with infertility, the real behind, going through 10 years, okay? A 10-year journey to get to a wonderful, healthy child. All of the ups and downs, the start and stops that happened over that decade with her and her husband and their journey. Wow. The real behind, dealing with depression and trauma and still having that scar of infertility be part of your life. It doesn't go away. And so, yes, while you may get to the point where, you are at the finish line and you are able to conceive and have a healthy child, or you adopt, or whatever it is, that scar of infertility is still there. It doesn't magically go away. And it's okay to not be okay about that. And so I appreciate her once again sharing her story, and also the fact that she was able to build this entire brand, nonprofit, and community space while going through all that she went through, to really be a beacon of hope and light for those of us who needed someone in this space and someone who looked like us to really say, hey, I'm here for you. And just because I got my child doesn't mean I'm not going to be here for you to help you along your journey. So shout out to you, Regina. You a real one. All right, so of course, you already know the deal. Follow us on social media at Fertility Ain't Fair. Check out our website, fertilityaintfair.com, as I mentioned earlier as well. If you have not checked out our Amazon store, please do so. Search My Fertility Ain't Fair Journal on Amazon and go ahead and get you a journal so you can write down all of your good notes and everything for your doctor's appointments, for your journey, while you're listening to the podcast. Go ahead and write some notes and some gems down. And then I'm going to plug my leggings that I have one right now. I just got a new pair. I'm super hyped. They fit like chef's kiss, like perfection. Sayona Fit leggings, fashion, comfort, and quality. Listen, the leggings are where I reside. I told y'all this before. I'm going to keep telling y'all, if y'all have not found them on social media, please do so. Okay, like they're high-waisted. Check. Tummy control. Like what? Butt lift. Yes. Scrunched, stretchy. You look good. You feel good. You'll be confident walking into the gym or going to your class or doing your YouTube video like I do in the mornings. Confident, cute, sexy, all of the above. So check them out on social media at Sayona Fit, SIYANA Fit, FIT, or SayonaFit.com. That's the plug. That's the post. Until next time, I am your forever friend in fertility. Stay hopeful.